Well, hey, howdy, hi. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by to join me today. I really do appreciate it. My name is Ellie, and I'm a witch, and today I'm going to be bringing you Bookmas Day 2, where we're going to be talking about Under One Roof by Lisa Underwood. So before I jump into the book itself, this is an ARC from Book Sirens, you know the drill by now. But for Book Bingo, I keep holding it up like you guys can read any of that. But I'll put on the screen. Today is we're going to be doing lead character is a detective because one of the characters is a detective, but it's told from 7 different points of view. So we're gonna call it good. One of the lead characters is a detective. So this book was independently published on August 22nd of this year, which I think is really interesting considering it's a Christmas book with its genre being listed as Christmas. This is a true novel at 291 pages. As usual, we'll start with a synopsis. So I just tried to read through the synopsis. We're gonna try this again. However, it is missing, I don't know if it's a section, a word, a phrase, but it is missing a part, and I went back to check to make sure I didn't just copy it wrong. It is missing a part, so I will I'll read this as best I can, but I don't know what it's supposed to say. Families can be the most accomplished liars of all. When Catherine Bridewell is found dead in her own front yard, her wealthy lakeside family becomes a collection of, and that's where it cuts out, so we're just gonna skip ahead. Could it be her aimless son, recently cut out of the family fortune? Perhaps her wild child, newly pregnant daughter with a shocking fiancé? Or was it her eldest daughter whose life is cracking at the seams? Even Catherine's own brother has secret ambitions of his own. As Detective Melissa Abner investigates, she discovers that Catherine's death may be connected to a final, explosive family dinner. The deeper Melissa digs, the more she uncovers 2 Bridewell families. The one they choose to show the world, and the one they keep hidden behind closed doors. Per usual, this will be a chapter by chapter breakdown with full spoilers. Off the jump, we're going to have to keep these stories straight. As I said, we have 7 characters that will be telling different parts of the story. Our timeline starts on Christmas morning. Before we jump back to a week before Christmas, we move forward from there, and it ends with an epilogue a week later. Including the prologue and epilogue, there are 31 chapters in total, and with all of these different characters, I'll put a chart on screen to kind of keep the characters straight. Prologue, Melissa, Christmas morning. Detective Melissa Abner is called in to a murder, and she recognizes the address, which is right next door to her Aunt Brenda's. She rushes over and is relieved that her aunt is okay. The victim is Catherine Bridewell of Bridewell Industries. She was stabbed to death, and Brenda is the one who found her in the front yard. As Melissa and her partner Keith are walking Brenda back inside, they see someone turn on a light in the Bridewell residence and surmise that it's likely Henry Bridewell, who is Catherine's son. Now the question is he a witness or a suspect? Chapter 1 is from Henry's point of view, 7 days before Christmas, and we get some insight into who Catherine is, and she is insufferable. Undeterred, she tapped his shoulder. Well, get up. The house looks depressing. You need to help Gloria make it look more festive. Henry rose slowly, gripping the armrest. Gloria quit, remember? That's right. How could I forget? Her frown deepened as she examined her immaculate manicure. Heaven forbid anyone consider my needs during the holiday. So it's not really a surprise that she gets murdered. She then starts picking on him about helping out and disparages his relationship, saying that his sister was smarter and marrying old and rich. Henry excuses himself from the conversation, and he goes to get ready for an interview. He was apparently fired from the family business by his mother, for what reason we are never told, but he now lives at home while he tries to find a new job. He leaves, and then we pick up with him at a coffee shop that a woman named Leah works at. We are to assume this is his girlfriend, but it's not actually his girlfriend because this is the first interaction that we see, and he's giving her his phone number. The two of them are going to go out together the next day, I guess, to pick out a Christmas tree. And the only other person in the shop is a contractor named Ryan, who also likes Leah, and Henry is very jealous of him. He's a very attractive man. When he goes back home, he pulls into the drive at the same time as his cousin Paul and his wife Holly. Holly is weird about interacting with Henry, like purposely rubbing herself up against him since she knows that he thinks she's hot. The only person missing is Sam, who is their son, who is at a wilderness survival camp, but he will be home in time for Christmas. Apparently, Henry does not like Paul, so he's not excited to hear that they'll be over for Christmas, especially since it means that his Uncle Richard will be in attendance. It seems right now that Richard had something to do with him being fired, and Holly is doing this whole pushing boundaries thing in front of her husband because she thinks it's a fun little game and that her and Henry do actually have a sexual relationship. He is calling it off though because, he can't do that to Leah, and who I started out under the impression that they were never going to get together. Chapter 2 is from Brenda's point of view, 7 days before Christmas. We pick up with Brenda when Paul pulls up into the driveway. She doesn't like Paul's haircut, which she notes, and she also doesn't like how Holly dresses, but she notices that Paul has served in the military, so she gets together some cookies to take next door to thank him for his service. Now, Henry is the one who opens the door, and he's very awkward. Brenda thinks he's just an idiot, which is fabulous. Catherine notices her through the open door, and it clearly doesn't like her and even threatens to kill her dogs. Turns out that Brenda was friends with Charles, who is Catherine's late husband, so they are acquainted. Paul comes to the door, thanks her for her cookies, and then invites Brenda to come over while he's in town, which she of course accepts. She then goes back home, but hears arguing next door. Being the nosy neighbor, she steps out back to try to hear the conversation, and it is between Richard and Henry. Henry is mad because Richard took charge of the company when Charles died, and then almost immediately fired Henry. Apparently, it was the board's decision, and they voted unanimously, which of course pisses Henry off. Richard says that the company will be passed down, but that he needs to live his life in the meantime. Henry is outraged to learn that he is not the only one with a claim to the inheritance, and the others being his sisters and Paul. Not wanting to continue the conversation, he leaves. Chapter 3 is from Elizabeth's point of view, 6 days before Christmas. Now, Elizabeth is an artist without much time for art. We pick up right before she's to leave to go see her family. She is a bridewell, of course, and she is the oldest sibling. She is taking her husband Josh and her stepdaughters Ava and Sophia to her mom's house for the first time. We learn that Catherine pays the mortgage, so Elizabeth doesn't really have a choice but to do what her mother wants. She has a solid job, but they live above what would be their means if she was the sole provider. Josh doesn't have a job, and isn't showing much drive to do anything meaningful, or work at all. Her stepdaughters also don't particularly like her, which is to be expected, I suppose. We do learn that she has a therapist who she likes a lot. He helps, that and the Xanax. Josh and her have tried couples counseling, but Josh wasn't really going to help himself, so it had been pointless in the end. They were also trying for a baby, which Elizabeth really wants, but they were struggling to conceive, and Josh refused to see a specialist. So we don't love Josh. He seemed fine at first, but then it just went immediately 90 degrees downhill by the end of the chapter. Chapter 4 is from Catherine's point of view, 6 days before Christmas. We learn that Catherine does feel a little bad as she realizes that her family doesn't exactly seem happy, but she pushes through it and ignores it, basically. She also does feel guilty about Henry in a general sense. When Catherine's husband Charles was still alive, he ran a tight ship at Bridewell Industries. He knew everything that went on and played a crucial role in all the big decision making. When Charles died, she handed over the responsibility of running the business to the management team and the board of directors. That had been a big mistake. Henry's entitlement and laziness were all her fault. She hadn't made him earn his position or prove his value the way the other managers had. I've spoiled my children for far too long. I know they won't like the changes that are coming, but I hope they'll see that it's all for the best. No, they won't like it, Richard agrees, but it will get easier over time, and I'm here to help. Now, she's a little concerned about Richard too, because of the amount of money being spent at the company, but we leave that be for now. Elizabeth and the family are the next to arrive. Catherine gets the girls settled into a room, and then have Josh and Elizabeth into the living room for a chat. Josh seems very nervous, and Catherine clearly doesn't like him, thinking that he's dragging Elizabeth down, forcing her to keep the stressful sales rep job that she has, which is all fair, and I'm actually with Catherine on this front. She follows up with insulting the two of them, so Elizabeth goes to lay down with Josh. Henry then comes home, but he rushes upstairs to avoid his mother. Christmas tree still has yet to be picked up. I also could have read it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be today that they went to pick it up. Holly then comes into the kitchen to help Catherine, and Catherine likes her. She is happy to be a part of the family, and her own home life was difficult growing up, but Catherine thinks that she ended up being well accomplished, and so she'll find Holly a spot at the company. Holly is very thankful. And then the conversation goes to Sam, but Holly's a little weird about the whole topic, so Catherine doesn't really push it. Holly's knife clattered against the counter as it slipped from her hand. She jumped back, narrowly dodging the sharp blade as it bounced onto the floor. Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Are you all right?" Holly carefully picked up the knife and placed it in the sink. "Sorry, I'm a little clumsy sometimes." "Be careful," Catherine warned, looking at the knife and then at Holly's bare, pedicured feet. Those blades are razor sharp. Yeah, I noticed. Holly let out an uncomfortable laugh. It slid right through the vegetables, smooth as butter. I always keep them sharpened, Catherine said, nodding towards the knife block on the counter. I can't stand a dull knife. The whole conversation is a catalyst for this, but honestly, I like this little bit of foreshadowing to the murder. Later in the night, Catherine catches Holly and Henry whispering and being, like, really suspicious, so she warns Holly that secrets don't always stay secret. Chapter 5 is from Melissa's point of view, 6 days before Christmas. Now, Melissa's at work, but the case that she has just doesn't sit well with her. It's for a 19-year-old former foster kid from a rough background, and he's going to prison for breaking into cars. Partner is sympathetic, but is right in saying that the law is the law. Having a bad home life or childhood doesn't give you the right to ruin somebody else's day, week, month, year. Melissa's mind wanders back to Henry and the fact that the privileged get off scot-free, but the rest of us are made to suffer. Keith tells her to come over for dinner, the wife's been bothering him to invite her. Melissa says that she appreciates it, but her ex-husband Brian has just been weighing so heavily on her mind, she can't really stand to be around a happy couple, or children. She goes home where she now lives with her parents, but before she goes inside, she calls a friend who asks for a favor, trying to get the 19-year-old kid decent representation. The friend makes no promises, but she says she'll see what she can do. Inside, Melissa finds that Brian had dropped off an envelope with a divorce agreement inside. Also, I just want to mention, the 19-year-old kid never gets brought up again. Even though it's the focal point of this whole chapter, not a single mention ever again. Chapter 6 is from Elizabeth's point of view, 6 days before Christmas. At dinner, Elizabeth is not having a good time, but her and Henry seem to be the only ones that are on that page. Henry's still angry that Richard is there, and he's listening to Paul and Richard talk business, which of course is aggravating to him. Elizabeth, on the other hand, is stuck on the fact that she isn't loved by her stepkids, upset that they don't want her to know about their socials, and she thinks that their bio parents aren't keeping an eye on them online, even though we see no proof of that. It's just one of those, I don't think they are, and so that makes it a fact kind of things. Anyway, now the girls are laughing privately to themselves, and that is also not okay to her. Her and Henry end up going outside to take a break and have a little sibling chat. Henry says that living at home has been awful. They reminisce about their childhood. Then Henry asks her about her life, which she says is shitty. She is starting to realize that she isn't happy and isn't loving life in the way she thinks she should be. Henry tells her that it kind of sounds like depression and she should talk to her therapist about it. You can change your mind, about everything. You can blow up your life anytime you want and start over. You're never stuck unless you want to be. And I really like that idea. I get why people would have a problem with that, but I like it, and I think it's something to keep in mind in your own lives. Later that night, after Elizabeth takes her shower, we find out that she has tattoos, quite a few apparently, but Catherine walks in on her and is disappointed to see the tattoos, which kind of sends her into a spiral. Vicky is here now, though, with her wealthy, elderly fiancé Howard, and to everyone's surprise, she's also pregnant. Chapter 7 is from Henry's point of view, 5 days before Christmas. And today is the day that him and Leah are going to go get a tree. She is not going home for Christmas, and Henry debates inviting her over, but that's a disaster waiting to happen. So instead he says that maybe the two of them can have a small celebration. She says that he should be spending time with his family, since his sisters are in town. Now he reveals a little bit about what's going on at home. Vicky and her old man, the fact that she's pregnant, which apparently Catherine is not pleased about since they aren't married yet, but they are engaged. She says that she doesn't fully understand, but her mom has problems with her sisters, so she can sympathize. She then picks out the perfect tree, and Henry sets it up for delivery to his house that evening. He then asks her if she wants to go out to eat, and she agrees. At the restaurant, he actually runs into Melissa. They exchange pleasantries, and he introduces her to Leah. Then he gets a call on the way to drop her off that they need to be at his mom's house to accept the tree, otherwise they're going to take it back. When they get there, though, Holly is already signing for it, but Leah's out of the car before Henry can stop her. Holly is weird about meeting Leah, clearly upset that Henry is interested in another woman, despite the fact that she herself is married. Holly tries to get Leah to come inside, but Henry says maybe another time, and quickly takes Leah home. Chapter 8 is from Vicky's point of view, 4 days before Christmas. Vicky is out on an errand to get her hubby-to-be a Christmas gift. The two know the relationship was unusual, but it worked for them in their own private ways. He wanted a child, having regretted not having a family sooner, and she wanted the best life for her baby, who is not her fiancé, though he doesn't know that. While she's out shopping, she sees a suspicious man following her. Now, at first she just brushes it off as baby brain or paranoia, but then it starts to get too obvious, and she starts to panic. She takes off running, or as much as she can, 6 months pregnant, and has a panic attack, ends up having to sit on the curb lest she passed out and hurt her baby. An old lady stops to ask if she's okay, and that is when she notices the man is no longer following her. She thanks the lady and then goes home. She is glad to see that Elizabeth's car is in the driveway since she feels comfortable talking to Elizabeth about the anxiety attack and paranoia since Elizabeth has a medical background. She gets in and Howard seems happy talking to the family and Holly is drunk, or high, or something. So Vicky goes upstairs to talk to Elizabeth, but her and Josh are in an argument. Nosy. She starts listening in. Apparently, Elizabeth's Xanax went missing and she asked if the girls took it and asked Josh to search their belongings. The ex-wife is now going to come pick up the girls because they called her crying about being accused of theft. Elizabeth says that Josh never has her back, and Vicky is pissed that Josh is so spineless and treats her sister like shit. She understands that this conversation is not for her ears though, but right before she walks away, she hears Josh say that it was probably Vicky that took them because she seems like the type. Chapter 9 is from Holly's point of view 3 days before Christmas. Holly wakes up the next morning and is a little worse for wear, but overall she's fine. She's just annoyed that Henry called off their little game, feeling like she was being tossed aside. It wasn't that she loves him, she just wants to be desired. When she gets downstairs, she sees the wreckage of the night before, empty alcohol bottles, snacks half eaten, the tree was clearly decorated by a drunk person. Her. She doesn't want to stay in the house any longer, so instead she goes to the cafe that Leah works at. Now, Leah and Ryan are flirting, and Holly snaps a quick photo and sends it to Henry. And that's when Leah notices her. She asked if Ryan is Leah's boyfriend, which she denies, but it's clear that Ryan has the hots for her. Wanting Ryan to leave, Holly really lays it on thick, hands over her number, telling him to call her if he wants to grab a drink. When he leaves, she invites Leah over for Christmas Eve dinner. As she's getting into her car, Henry pulls up, pissed off that Holly would send him that picture for no reason, and Holly says she didn't mean anything by it, it's really not a big deal. Chapter 10 is from Elizabeth's point of view 3 days before Christmas, and she feels like a failure and just very alone. The girls are being picked up by their mom Tanya soon. Now, she had gone through the girls' belongings, but she couldn't find the missing pills, which just made her seem like a piece of shit once more. She runs into Vicky in the kitchen, and they have a brief back and forth before Tanya arrives, at which point Elizabeth goes outside. Tanya is yelling at Josh about how Elizabeth is never to be around the kids again, or she would take him to court. And I get being protective of your kids, but she has no right to say who can and can't be around them as long as they aren't a sex offender. So accusing a child of theft isn't ideal, I would say, but it also is not the biggest deal in the grand scheme of things. Step-parents have the same rights as any other parent, so really the court wouldn't do shit other than maybe change the visitation to be less, but they wouldn't do much beyond that. Anyways, Tanya starts yelling at Elizabeth and goes to get in her face, so Vicky comes out and pushes Tanya back, telling her to leave. She then tells Josh he needs to leave too, which he does. Vicky runs Elizabeth a bath, which is very nice. She then opens up about the panic attacks, but Elizabeth says, is there a chance you aren't imagining it, that there's someone who might actually want to stalk you? It's probably nothing, Vicky said, but there's this one guy. She swallowed hard, bracing herself against the wall. I met him at a bar about 6 months ago, and now he won't leave me alone. Chapter 11 is from Melissa's point of view 3 days before Christmas. Now, Melissa isn't stalking Brian, but she is eating lunch by his work, and she does see him. She just can't stop herself from being curious about who he might be seeing, since he didn't tell her why their marriage was over. I could say it isn't weird that she happens to be eating at a restaurant near where he worked, but then she goes to his house, goes in the backyard to look into the house, and that is where I draw the line on this is too much. This chapter had me very on edge, genuinely, waiting for her to be caught. My other concern for her is that most people have some kind of home security system, whether it be a Ring camera or something similar. In a quick motion, she turned to assess the porch. Had she left any obvious signs that she'd been there? The snow had already crunched down quite a bit when she got there, so her footprints didn't appear fresh or distinguishable. The flower pot looked undisturbed. She should be fine. Then Melissa clocked something in her peripheral vision. Oh shit. A small red light blinked at her. What the hell? That camera wasn't there before. When did... Shit. She jumps into her car and gets the hell out of there. Chapter 12 is from Henry's point of view 3 days before Christmas. Henry goes to Leah's house to uninvite her to Christmas Eve dinner. She invites him in, and at the same time Ryan shows up to get his drill that he had left behind. While they're all eating, they get an alert that a blizzard is in effect and roadways are closed to non-essential traffic, so they all get stuck there. Which... okay, blizzards don't come on that fast. They both would have already had to have driven in some pretty nasty conditions, so this is just a cheap way to cause drama. Don't really appreciate it. They get a fire going, set up camp in the living room. I should also mention that it's in this chapter that Henry finally tells her that he likes her, but she didn't say anything in return. He also lies and says that Paul and Holly have an open marriage, and that Ryan should call Holly, but he says that, she isn't his type. Chapter 13 is from Vicky's point of view 2 days before Christmas. Now, Vicky wakes up Elizabeth, and the two are set to go out to lunch. As they go downstairs, their mother enlists their help vacuuming and gets really mad that they're going out to lunch without her. At the restaurant, they talk a little more about Vicky's stalker, the father of her child. They met in a bar, had a quickie in the car, and then Vicky just never wanted to hear from him again. She had just gotten engaged, and she felt bad that she had cheated. It wasn't something that she ever wanted to entertain the idea of, regardless of the fact that her marriage was not one born of love. She doesn't know the man's name, but he had found her friend's Instagram where he had posted a picture of her and accidentally outed her pregnancy. So the mystery man was messaging her once more about meeting up, but he was starting to get creepy, saying that he knows where her mom lives and stuff like that. Elizabeth asks if she could figure out who it is, but she says that she was way too drunk to remember his name, that he put his name into her phone as Hi, and that his Instagram has his name listed as Jay Gatsby. They move on to Elizabeth's marital problems. Josh is celebrating Christmas with Tanya and the girls, and honestly, I have a feeling they will be getting back together. They then switch itineraries and go see a movie. On the way home, Vicky says that Elizabeth deserves better and that she should just move in with her and Howard. Elizabeth appreciates the thought, but she says she's okay. She wants to be with Josh and stay close to the girls. When they get home, the driveway is full, so everyone is home, but they still expect to get an earful from their mother about having been gone so long. Vicky steeled herself for her mother's fury as she opened the heavy oak door. She pictured Catherine on the velvet sofa, ready to confront them with her harsh words. Their mother couldn't stand it that they went out for too long without consulting her. The house was strangely quiet. As her wet boots came off, a sudden and terrifying shriek from upstairs shattered the silence. Vicky's chest tightened, her heart pounding as her mother's scream echoed through the long, empty staircase before them. Chapter 14 is from Catherine's point of view, 2 days before Christmas. Catherine tells the crew that they will be going out to lunch, which they agree to. Henry finally comes home, and she tells him that he too will be coming to lunch. He is hesitant and tells his mom that, he was out at Leah's and needs a nap. Oh, and also that he invited her to dinner. His mom is not happy, obviously. But she knows that Leah is a waitress, so thinks that maybe she can force her to help at the party, so she ends up allowing it. She then goes to get herself ready, and this is when we learn that she is the one who took Elizabeth's Xanax, something about it making her weak. She then removes a few pills from the bottle and leaves it on Vicky's nightstand to try to break up their rekindled friendship. Howard catches her in the room, but she just says she's checking to see if anyone needs towels, and to say they're going out to lunch. Howard declines the invite, he doesn't eat lunch, and he needs his daily nap. So the group ends up going to a Waffle House, which pisses Catherine off. Holly is talking about how she's so excited to pick up Sam from survival camp. When they get home, Catherine does actually take towels up to Vicky's room, where she finds Howard dead. She has no idea what to think or do, but she worries that he had taken some Xanax and that, it had an adverse reaction to his own medications. She first thinks that she needs to call a lawyer to see if they can secure Vicky's future wealth, since they aren't married and no one would know what the will says. She won't call an ambulance because, he's dead and she knows it. But this just looks like she had to have randomly found him dead, so she screams. Chapter 15 is from Vicky's point of view, 2 days before Christmas. They run upstairs and find Howard. Elizabeth calls 911, starts CPR. When the paramedics arrive, they confirm that he is too far gone and direct them to call the funeral home instead. Holly takes charge, tells everyone to leave Vicky to be with Howard alone. Vicky reflects on how they met and that she genuinely cared about Howard. She doesn't know how she'll be taking care of their child, but beyond that, she actually misses Howard, and she doesn't really know where to go from there. Chapter 16 is from Holly's point of view, 1 day before Christmas. Holly leaves early. She tried to wake Paul, who just tells her to take the Hummer and go on without him. She is so excited to pick up Sam, who is not at a survival camp, but rather a Bible camp because his girlfriend is very religious. When she arrives, the lady at the desk is very rude, saying that the camp still has 3 more days and that it's not scheduled for her to pick him up. Which is weird to me, that a Bible camp wouldn't have them home on Christmas? The big religious holiday? Anyway, Sam comes to the office to ask if he can just stay until camp is over, since he's in a play with his girlfriend. Holly wants nothing more than to take him, but she also knows how excited he is, so she goes home alone. On the way back, though, she ends up sliding off the road and is annoyed because she always wanted an SUV, but Paul had brought home the Hummer, and so she was just stuck with that. She does make it home, but everyone is looking at her like she's crazy, which further pisses her off. Holly took a few shaky steps until she was standing in the dining room. Sam's not coming. He's staying at the Christian camp so that he can be Joseph in the nativity play. Paul almost choked on his drink, but managed to swallow it. Very funny. You mean the wilderness camp wasn't over yet? If he wants to stay longer, I guess that's fine. Paul's eyes darted around the room, and he let out an uncomfortable laugh. That's one tough kid. Holly's hands clenched into tight fists, and she shook her head. No, he's not at a wilderness camp. He's at a Bible camp, because that's where he wants to be, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Paul put down his wine glass and his face flushed redder than his drink. Well, that's news to me, but that's fine, I guess, if that's what he wants to do. Stop lying, Holly yelled. I'm so sick of it. You knew exactly where he was, but you were too embarrassed to tell your family. She pointed to the window. I've been gone out in this shitstorm since this morning. Her voice cracked as tears lodged in her throat. Why didn't you call to see if I was okay? She looked around at all of them, all of these disgusting, selfish people. None of them gave a shit about her. Why didn't any of you check to see if I was okay? Holly, Paul stammered. I think you should go calm down. Maybe get yourself cleaned up a bit. You'll feel better if... I feel fine, Holly shouted. What I don't understand is why no one in this family is worried about me for even a second. I almost died in that stupid, ugly thing you make me drive. And maybe I would have been able to see where I was going if there weren't so many damn flag stickers all over the windows. Paul rose slowly and lowered his voice, like he was trying to convince a delusional patient to return to the mental institution. He tried to put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, but Holly jerked away. Don't touch me. Just leave me alone. She raised her hands and staggered to the stairs. Then she leaned over the banister and raised her voice so that everyone would hear her. I'm going to take a shower. Please don't let me ruin your evening. She paused, lowering her head. You know, a man died here yesterday, but you should all keep celebrating. That's a totally normal thing to do. She looked at her husband, never feeling more disgusted than she felt right now. His eyes were begging her to stop making a scene, to get her shit together and be the pretty, stupid, blonde bimbo housewife that he liked. But that wasn't who Holly was anymore, and she was sick of pretending. Just go finish your dinner, asshole. Chapter 17 is from Henry's point of view, one day before Christmas. Henry goes to pick up Leah, who is wearing a cute little red dress, but she actually confesses that she likes Henry too. It's cute, adorable, they kiss. Then they go to his mom's house, and he actually hadn't told Leah about Howard. It's not really important. She settles into the family well, helping out in the kitchen, chatting with everyone. Then comes the dinner, which Henry is of course nervous about. His family's kind of a mess. Then Holly walks in, does her little speech, and then the family moves on, and she ends up rejoining them before dessert. Leah does tell him that she's actually having fun whenever she and him are alone in the kitchen. Back at the table, his mom has an announcement of sorts to make. This is going to be very long, but I think it's important to hear it rather than me trying to condense it, and that way you actually understand why this miserable lady was murdered. As you know, I usually give each of you a generous gift on Christmas Eve. She paused, her eyes sweeping the table. This year is different. Henry's stomach dropped. Something was coming. He didn't know what, but he sensed it, the same way animals sensed a hurricane approaching. What this family needs, Catherine continued, is a controlled wildfire. Catherine's piercing stare lingered on each family member, and Henry's palms began to sweat. I heard something interesting on one of Henry's programs the other day. When a forest becomes overgrown, it needs to burn to grow anew. Her voice was flat, detached. This family has become a tangle of lies and complacency. It's time to clear it all out. What the hell was his mother talking about? Henry looked at his sisters, hoping for a clue, but they seemed equally bewildered. Vicky's face turned pale, and Elizabeth's complexion wasn't great either. As Elizabeth's eyes met his, their mutual uneasiness was clear. Starting January 1st, no more money for anyone, Catherine said, a collective gasp. Henry shook his head almost imperceptibly. He'd been cut off months ago, but why do this to Vicky right now? She was expecting a baby, and Howard had recently died. I'm changing my will tomorrow. Everything is going to charity. Richard almost choked on his wine. He gave his chest a few gentle taps with his fist to force it down. Paul pushed his chair back, his confused expression darting to Richard and Catherine. What? But why? You'll get your inheritance back when you've earned it. Catherine's eyes locked on Henry. Let's start with you, shall we? Henry's breath hitched in his throat. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Leah lower her head and refold the white cloth napkin in her lap. He wished he could run away, get Leah the hell out of here before his mother said anything else, but he remained frozen in his seat, waiting for the verdict. Henry, you need a proper job, somewhere you can climb to the ranks on your own merit until you're a senior executive, and no more dating waitresses. A knot of tension formed between Henry's shoulder blades, and he closed his eyes. Leah, dear, Catherine continued, her voice laced with false sweetness, you don't want him anyway. He's unemployed, broke, and likely to stay that way. Leah's sharp intake of breath cut through Henry like a knife. He wanted to defend himself, but if he argued with his mother, it would only make things worse. Catherine moved on to Elizabeth. You need to finish medical school and become a doctor like you were meant to be. Stop wasting your talents on that sales job, and no more therapy or anxiety medication. You're a bride well. Act like one. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. She gripped the stem of her wineglass, and Henry could tell she was struggling to keep her composure. Henry's chest ached for her. He hated seeing her hurt like this. Just as he was about to yell at their mother, Elizabeth caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. She looked down, a tear sliding down her cheek. Catherine's gaze swept to Vicky. As for you, your fiancé is dead, and you're getting nothing. All his money is going to a distant cousin in Texas. So, that man, the one who's been stopping by looking for you, I assume he's the baby's father, maybe he'll support you now. A strangled noise escaped Vicky's throat. She pressed a hand to her mouth and her eyes wide with disbelief. I don't know what you mean. Who's been stopping by? Catherine didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Paul. You, my nephew, are possibly the laziest person I've ever met. If you want a piece of this company, you'll earn it like Henry. Elsewhere. And for God's sake, pay attention to your wife before she ends up in Henry's bed. Again. Paul's face burned bright red and his jaw tightened. The large veins in his neck bulged as he pushed back from the table. What the fuck? His mouth contorted with rage. He turned, glaring at his wife, and then whipped his head around to face Henry. The whole table shook as Paul jumped out of his chair and lunged forward. His massive hands clamped around Henry's throat. You touched my wife? Henry gasped, clawing at Paul's finger as his vision blurred. Pain exploded in Henry's neck as he flailed around and toppled backwards. Stop it! Elizabeth shrieked as she tried to intervene. Enough! Catherine shouted. Paul paused, glancing at Catherine and then at Henry, who was desperately crawling away. Sit down. Catherine's command cracked like a whip. Paul hesitated, but kept his fists clenched at his sides. Now, Catherine said. The room went silent except for Holly's muted sobs. Henry's mind raced, trying to process everything. He couldn't look at Leah, unable to bear the disgust in her eyes. His future, his family, Leah, it was all crumbling around him. As everyone returned to their seats, Catherine's focus narrowed in on Holly. It's time you toughened up, Catherine said, her voice dripping with disdain. Stop seeking validation from everyone around you. You're smarter than you let on. Start acting like it. Holly's crying quiet as she nodded along. You're right. I know I can do better. Catherine stared at Holly for a long time. Once you're able to carry yourself like a professional, I'd like you to take on a more active role in the business. Yes, Holly said, wiping her tears from her cheeks. I won't let you down. Catherine pointed at Richard. You've been lining your pockets with far too much company money. That ends now. You're fired. Richard sputtered, wine dripping down his chin. Catherine, you can't. I can and I have, she said with a dismissive wave. Catherine tilted her head towards Elizabeth. Speaking of secrets, did you know that your anxiety medication is under Vicky's bed? Elizabeth's head snapped up, her eyes wide and empty, her lips quivered and her face had gone ashen. What? Vicky's been helping herself to her pills. Isn't that right, Vicky? Vicky shook her head forcefully. No, I didn't. Save it, Catherine interrupted. She drained her wine and set the glass back down with a sharp click. Then she strode from the room, abandoning the devastation behind her. As the clicking sound of her heels faded into the distance, all hell broke loose. Accusations, sobs, chairs crashing around. Henry sat motionless, his world crumbling to nothing as Leah's hand slipped from his grasp. He felt her stiffen beside him, heard her whisper, "Oh my God," as the full weight of Catherine's words sank in. She unwillingly witnessed this family's implosion, and Henry knew she'd never see him the same way again. Chapter 18 is from Elizabeth's point of view, one day before Christmas. Leah asks Henry to just take her home, so they leave. Chaos erupts around her, so Elizabeth instead goes upstairs to see if she can find the pill bottle to confirm that her mother was correct about Vicky being the thief. She does find the pill bottle, but Vicky comes in to tell her that she didn't take them. Obviously, it was their mother trying to stir the pot, and Elizabeth does come to believe her. She then goes outside to call her therapist to say that she won't be able to continue seeing him. She then calls Josh. He is staying at Tanya's house, so they're just one big happy family on Christmas for the girls. She then asks about Tanya's husband, but they're no longer together, so she asks the question on everyone's mind. Are they getting back together? The answer is yes. She hangs up and sits outside in the freezing rain. Henry pulls up and drags her back inside and upstairs. In her room are Holly and Vicky already, so Elizabeth goes to shower, having a breakdown, and when she gets back, it's just the siblings left. She tells them what's going on, and Henry goes to get more wine. While he's gone, Vicky sees her tattoos and thinks that they are just stunning. They're all Elizabeth's drawings. She's very talented, apparently. Henry returns with the wine, and they all commiserate that they have to move back home, but at least they have each other. Vicky says that Howard had not yet named her the beneficiary, so her and the baby are SOL. The siblings all turn in for the night. Same room, of course, since they need that support. Chapter 19 is from Vicky's point of view on Christmas morning. The siblings are woken by police in the yard. Going downstairs, they learn that their mother is dead. Vicky starts to dissociate and only hears bits and pieces of what's going on, but she gathers that her mother has been stabbed. The officers usher everyone upstairs into separate rooms, so that way they can't get a story together. Vicky then starts to realize that they are being separated to be questioned in connection to the crime. They didn't think her mother's death was an accident, they suspected murder. And I know that she heard them say, "Found her in the front yard, knife wound, securing the house." The detectives come in and talk to everyone, and then they're allowed to go back downstairs. Henry and Paul end up getting into another argument that this time has Paul punching Henry in the face. The detectives break up the fight, and they say that they want everyone to go down to the station to get fingerprinted, which is weird, but whatever. Everyone leaves with them. Chapter 20 is from Melissa's point of view on Christmas Day. Melissa is reviewing the notes, and she says that everyone's story is plausible, but only the siblings can alibi each other, and no one else can account for anybody else's whereabouts outside of that. But then Melissa has to just be so insensitive. Something else bothered Melissa. The family's emotions were unusual and unpredictable. Holly, who was married to Catherine's nephew, cried uncontrollably with what appeared to be genuine grief. But Catherine's adult children had an unsettling level of emotional self-control. Someone had just killed their mother. Where was their anguish? Not everyone experiences or expresses grief in the same way, along with, shock playing a role in it. So it is not reasonable to suspect them or say that Holly was the only one acting how she should. They allow the family to go home, and Keith tells her that they couldn't find anything concrete at the scene because of the snow. The knife that they used was one of Catherine's, which points to it being someone in the house that was the murderer. They agree it's time to go home, and they'll come back with fresh eyes the next day. When Melissa gets home, her family asks about the case, which she can't disclose much, especially since they shouldn't even know about it because the crime has not been reported on the news yet. Brian texts her to ask why she was at the house, and she makes up some excuse about needing to find a necklace. She then resolves that she needs to move on with her life, and that she will sign the divorce papers the next day. Chapter 21 is from Elizabeth's point of view on Christmas Eve. Everyone is drunk, save for Vicky, of course, not knowing where to go from there. Paul has forgiven Henry, though, even if it was just the wine talking at this point. The talking point that everyone refuses to acknowledge is, has she changed the will yet? Catherine had told them that she was going to talk to the lawyer the next day, which is Christmas Day, to change it, which is also just nonsense, because there's no way that anybody would be spending Christmas doing that. But she died too early in the morning, so chances are slim that she actually changed it. Henry does finally say that maybe it's a good thing, and that maybe the will hasn't been changed, and while everyone says it's insensitive, no one really disagrees. Chapter 2 is from Elizabeth's point of view, one day after Christmas. She is making pancakes when Vicky comes down to tell her that the siblings needed to go to the station at 1 p.m. to be interviewed again. Holly, Paul, and Richard are going to be interviewed later, but they want them to arrive separately, so the siblings are going first. Then Josh arrives, which Elizabeth is thankful for, but isn't there for her. They are separating because he still has feelings for Tanya, and he wants to work that out. She tells him that they could work things out together, but he's done with the relationship, so that's that. He is worried that they won't be able to pay the bills, but Elizabeth says that she can't exactly leave, so she can't exactly work. Josh doesn't work, and also is wanting a separation, so I don't see why he cares. I wondered if he was going to try to take a claim of the house, but her mother paid the mortgage, so he had no claim to it, really. Nor should he. He didn't work, he didn't contribute, so he should just go live with Tanya and leave Elizabeth with the house. Chapter 23 is from Melissa's point of view, one day after Christmas. Now, Melissa is going over the interview transcript from the day, so we get a little bit of insight. The first interview we review is Josh's, and this little slimeball says outright he thinks Henry did it, with no reasoning. You can't just say that, I'm gonna be honest, you can't just say that. Next up was Holly, who just relayed the argument and the stipulations that Catherine had put on each family member and how that had affected everyone. Next was Leah. She says that the whole family is rather rude, but that Catherine said a lot of cruel things that night. Leah does feel bad that Henry was told all that, but she was also apparently rather curt with him whenever he took her home. The other thing she noted is that Holly was the one who invited her to dinner, and that she gave Ryan her phone number while she was at the cafe. Next is Richard, who just downplayed the whole being fired thing. Said it was simply a misunderstanding about how much he should be paid, and that it was all civil. He then brushed Holly off as being overly emotional and blowing things out of proportion. The detective then beats around the bush, but basically asks if he had anything to do with it, and he shuts down, saying he won't answer any more questions without a lawyer. Next is Vicky, who tells them about the man stalking her. He had shown up to the house as Catherine had said, and she explained that he has been nonstop calling, texting, and that she thought she saw him following her the other day. The police said that they'll look into him. Lastly, we have Henry. And the only new thing he says is that he argued with Richard the first day he was there, which they know because Brenda mentioned overhearing it. In the end, Melissa doesn't really know who or what to believe, but she does know that this mystery baby daddy is a lead and they need to figure out who he is. Chapter 24 is from Henry's point of view, 2 days after Christmas. Henry goes to visit Leah, scared that she will tell him to just leave and never come back to the cafe again. To his surprise and joy, she says that they can talk. She says that she doesn't blame Henry for what his mom said, and that she is sorry that he is dealing with all that right now. Then Ryan shows up, calls Henry a murderer, telling him to stay away from Leah. She tells Ryan to leave him alone, or she's calling the police. He says go ahead, they can come and arrest the murderer, because apparently it's all over the news that he's the murderer. Then we learned that Ryan and Leah had actually hooked up 6 months ago, but that Leah had made it clear she didn't want a relationship. Ryan ends up leaving and Henry kisses her. She actually ends up inviting him over that night. When he goes home, there are news vans waiting, though they haven't been there for long apparently. Richard is calling his lawyer to see if, all of this is legal. Later that night, when he leaves the house, Henry is called a murderer by the reporters, but he just leaves. He has to stop at the gas station, and inside the lady asks if he's the guy on the news, and he just leaves. He and Leah spend the night together, very cute, but whenever she goes to sleep, he finally allows himself to actually grieve the loss of his mother. Chapter 25 is from Vicky's point of view, 3 days after Christmas. Vicky goes to the station to work with a sketch artist, and she doesn't think she'll be much help, but she does actually end up getting the sketch spot on to the baby daddy. As she is leaving, she overhears Keith on the phone talking about Howard's death, which concerns Vicky since it was ruled as natural causes. She gets home at the same time as Henry, and surprise, Sam is there too. Richard is planning the memorial service for that weekend and said that the lawyers will be by later to read the will. Melissa shows up to tell them what she knows and to go over a few things. The tox report came back for Catherine, and it showed Xanax in her system, which she wasn't prescribed. Vicky explains that her mother stole it from Elizabeth to frame Vicky and tear them apart, but no one in the house thought she had an addiction problem, so wasn't sure why she would have taken it. Circling back to Howard, he did not originally have an autopsy because at his age it was presumed natural causes, but with Catherine's death, they re-looked into Howard. His case still being ruled natural causes, they didn't find any Xanax in his system. The last thing to mention is that the neighbor on the other side of the house to where Brenda would be is returning shortly, and they have security cameras, and so that might help them. Chapter 26 is from Holly's point of view, 4 days after Christmas. The lawyer is arriving to read the will, and boy does it not go how you think it will. Apparently, Catherine had already changed the will to give everything to Holly. The company, the house, all assets, all accounts. Everyone is furious and are assuming that Holly had to have had something to do with this, but she's just as shocked as the rest of them. Catherine also left her a letter, which she reads now. Dear Holly, your name suits you perfectly, appearing beautiful and prickly on the surface, but hiding deception and danger within. It's this combination that causes others to underestimate you. I know that it's your greatest strength, and I understand the challenges you have faced to reach this point. I'm sure it comes as a surprise to hear that I'm leaving you in control of my entire estate, but it shouldn't. In all the years I've known you, you stand out as the only one in our family with the fortitude and bravery to ensure the ongoing success of the Bridewell legacy. I know you will treat my company and my memory with the care and respect they deserve. Now get to work and make me proud. Catherine Bridewell. First order of business is to attend the board meeting that will take place that night, really step into her role as the owner of the company, and then she would just figure out the rest as she went. Because, she does now have everybody else's lives to consider. Chapter 27 is from Melissa's point of view, 4 days after Christmas. Now, the footage from the neighbors' cameras are in, and the detectives watch it. Now, the camera can't actually see where Catherine was stabbed, so they just had to hope that the killer had come from the neighbor's direction, and they are lucky enough that the killer did. They go see him walk up to the house, and then come running back from where Catherine was killed, and they get a good look at his face. The man sort of looked like, no, she shook her head. Her emotions clouded her judgment, causing her to see things. She needed to be objective and look at the evidence rationally. But as the suspect turned his head again, the light catching his profile, Melissa's breath lodged in her throat. Those eyes, that nose, the curve of his lips. It couldn't be. But the longer she looked, the more certain she became. Keith, she whispered. That's Brian. Keith's eyes widened as all the color drained from his face. He stared at her, disbelieving, then his gaze started back to the screen. What? Your soon-to-be ex-husband? Are you sure? Melissa nodded, her mind racing a million miles a second. Why was Brian there? What was his connection to Catherine Bridewell, and how had she missed it? Melissa then looks at the sketch of Vicky's baby daddy, and it is in fact Brian. She can't arrest him though, as it's a clear conflict of interest, so Keith goes instead. Melissa watches the interrogation through the mirrored glass, and Brian admits to thinking that he is the baby daddy. He said that he went to the house a few times, but every time he was turned away by Catherine, saying Vicky wasn't there. He admits that he was there the morning, hoping that Vicky would finally talk to him, but Catherine came out holding a knife. He claims he ran away, that he didn't kill her, but it's just too suspicious, so he's arrested for murder. Chapter 28 is from Elizabeth's point of view, 5 days after Christmas. Holly comes into the kitchen and asks the siblings what they would do with their lives now. Henry has a job interview, though Holly does offer him a position that he turns down. Vicky just wants her baby to grow up around family, and Elizabeth wants to pursue art. Holly is so happy for them and tells them that the house is theirs and that they should all move in, which they wholeheartedly agree to. They then spend the rest of the day moving furniture from the den to make it an art studio for Elizabeth. They clean out the spare bedroom closet and start planning the nursery, and Holly is overseeing, genuinely happy for them. Paul knocks on Elizabeth's door just as she's about to go to sleep and says that Josh is downstairs. He says he's happy to tell Josh to kick rocks, but Elizabeth says she's fine, but she does appreciate the offer. She and Josh step outside, where Josh apologizes and said he never should have left. She asks, is that really why you're here? Because in all of the voicemails that you left me, you made mention of the will. He says they can work through it and that he wants to make it work. She says she doesn't. It's over. And they're getting a divorce. End of story. Chapter 29 is from Melissa's point of view, 6 days after Christmas. Melissa and Brenda go to the funeral, and it is fine. She then takes Brenda home, but she's invited in for spaghetti, which she of course accepts. Brenda asks her to take the dogs out, but on her way out, she finds a pair of bloody gloves, which she stuffed into her pocket. She then goes to the lake and really thinks about what to do. In the end, she fills the glove with rocks, looking back at her aunt's house one last time. Smoke billowed from Brenda's chimney, creating curly-shaped puffy clouds. Melissa thought about the meatballs her aunt had spent all morning making for her, the cookie trays she took to the local nursing homes, and the Christmas cards and care packages she sent to military service members stationed overseas. Brenda made the world a better place. Catherine and Brian did not. The justice system was broken, too often condemning the poor and innocent while allowing monsters to go free. She throws the gloves into the lake and then returns to the house. Her aunt tells her that she saw her by the lake and thanks her for cleaning up her little mess. Epilogue is from Brenda's point of view, 7 days after Christmas. Brenda takes over a casserole and is invited in by the siblings. Everyone's doing well, the house looks great, and Brenda is happy to help out, stepping into that pseudo-motherly role. When she goes home, she reminisces about that night, or morning, as it was. She had stepped outside with her dogs and saw Brian in the yard. Catherine then came out with a knife to chase him away. One of Brenda's dogs at that point slipped his leash, and Catherine was already not happy with Brenda for allowing the dogs on her lawn, so she went after the dog to stab it. The two women got into a scuffle, and the knife ended up in Catherine's chest. Brenda ran back home, hid the gloves, called the police, because she knew that Melissa would find out about Brian because she was a good detective. She thinks that the family is better off without Catherine, clearly, so she isn't exactly sad about how things turned out. And that's the book. I didn't love it or hate it. It felt long-winded, and I was just ready for it to be over, I'm gonna be honest. It was written fine. I just wasn't invested in the story. I did like the characters though, and I think that they were well written and realistic for the most part. I didn't like Melissa though, or Brenda. They just didn't feel real. I also don't know about the police talk, conflict of interest stuff especially. They live in a smaller town, so having a former classmate be your suspect is not inherently a conflict of interest. The timeline was also rather quick, obviously for the sake of the story, but it felt rushed, and again, I just wasn't invested and didn't care. I like the premise well enough, and I think the writer is a good writer, and I would read something else by her. This just missed the mark for me. And that's all that I have for you today. This is super fun. I really just got to a point where I was like, can this be over? Like, I ended up having to ask for an extension because it just took me so long to get through this book, because I wanted to skim chapters, but that's hard whenever I'm trying to review it, and also I need to get the information. But it was just so hard to get through. I was struggling so much, and it's not like the book is bad. I just didn't love it, and it felt rushed, but also way too slow at the same time. I love the different perspectives. I do enjoy that. I just feel like it was too much that didn't matter. And it just felt like it was no longer focused on the murder, because like that was like the whole big thing. I feel like we could have skipped out on Melissa, we could have skipped out on Brenda, we could have skipped out on Holly's point of view. That's 3 characters with several, chapters that I just didn't need. I didn't care about their lives. I don't know why we had such a focus on, Sam being in a Christian camp. I don't understand why that mattered. Apparently nobody in the family is religious. So A, why do they care? And B, why does it matter? Why do I need to know that this kid is not at a survival camp? He literally doesn't matter to the story at all. So why do I care? Why am I being told this for like 5 chapters that he's just not there? Why does it matter? Because he comes into the story at the end. It's like, dang, I'm so sorry for you guys. And that's that. Never see him again. And that was just kind of the whole book for me. It was just a lot of stuff that didn't matter. I don't know if that was like to pad the pages, because even without those mentions, those chapters, whatever, it wouldn't have been that much shorter. It still would have been a full-length novel. It wouldn't have turned it into a novella. So I'm not sure what the point of a lot of the stuff that didn't matter was. And I think that's probably my problem with it, because by the end I was just like, what are we talking about again? Also, she did write the villain, Catherine, very well. I hated her. Not sure how realistic it was, but I did hate her. But yeah, y'all just let me know what you guys think. I think this is another 3-star read. I don't know if I'm gonna read anything that's better or worse than this for this series, but it's fine. Another mid book is fine. I'm used to it at this point. I'm trying to get these outros to be a little bit shorter. We'll see how that goes. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.